Alerting everybody I'm not home right now.
Yeah,
right?
every morning's
I'm just curious, did we just give
ideas?
An idea.
This is an NBC News Special Report. Here's Matt Lauer and Savanna Guthrie.
And good morning, everyone. The dedication of the National September 11th Memorial Museum here in New York City is just now getting underway.
President Obama joining survivors, first responders, and families of victims at the ceremony that's happening right now. It is important to remember this museum honors not only the victims at Ground Zero, but also the lives lost that day at the Pentagon and in Shanksville, Pennsylvania.
It is a stunning museum that is massive in size, comprising just thousands of artifacts. NBC's national correspondent Peter Alexander is down at the site. Peter, good morning to you.
Matt, good morning to you. A short time ago, we heard from a man named Arthur Gardner. His brother died at this site, and I think he put it best when he said that this museum is intended to honor the dead, but also to inspire the living. As Alice Greenwald, the director of the museum on this site, described it not long ago, she said, this is a museum without an ending. The experience for so many of the family members and all those who witnessed this worldwide still so raw 13 years after 9/11, the loss of so many lives on this site. The president a short time ago did have the opportunity, as you noted, to tour this site, led by former Mayor Michael Bloomberg. He was there with his wife, First Lady Michelle Obama, and Bill and Hillary Clinton also joined them, walking through a hallway, a memorial hall, where one of the messages inside reads, "No day shall erase you from the memory of time." This process has been 13 years in the making. The desire to build a location here finally completed, and this is a day that many people say is a promise fulfilled. Matt, Savannah.
Peter Alexander there at Ground Zero, thank you. We want to bring in NBC's Tom Brokaw, who was, of course, there that morning along with Matt, as you watch this horror down in the center of Manhattan and across the country as well. It is a delicate thing to build a memorial that will speak to the horror of this event, but also the heroism.
Well, especially in New York, where everyone has an outspoken opinion. But I think it's a great tribute to the determination of the city and all the people who were involved, that they not only did it, but they did it magnificently. And I think it's an important physical reminder that this country was changed profoundly by what happened on 9/11. When Matt and I were there that day, at one point I said, this will change us. We're going to war. I had no idea what that really meant. And now, all these years later, we've had the two longest wars in our nation's history.
Yeah, Mike Bloomberg talking right now. Those changes are big and little, Tom. I mean, huge in terms of geopolitics, little in terms, you go into this museum, you walk through a security checkpoint to begin, and they make the point right there that prior to 9/11, the intensity of that security would have been much less.
Well, that's the point. My grandchildren are growing up in a society in which everything is recorded on video cameras. Anything that they go to, they have to go through some kind of a security apparatus. They've adjusted to it. My own personal hope is that that can be dialed down at some point. It goes well beyond just putting all of your toiletries in a little plastic bag. NSA came out of 9/11, and the monitoring that goes on around the world and the controversy that's involved in that, that's an offshoot of it as well.
Matt, you actually got to preview a tour of this museum, and it seems to me there's massive scale. There are huge monuments to the destruction, but perhaps what's most heartbreaking are these little artifacts of everyday life that have somehow been preserved.
Just mementos of the first responders and of the victims. The family members have been so generous in donating items, and now we have President Obama taking to the podium. He will speak to those dignitaries gathered at this museum.
Thank you. Please be seated. Mayor Bloomberg, Governor Cuomo, honored guests, families of the fallen. In those awful moments, after the South Tower was hit, some of the injured huddled in the wreckage of the 78th floor. The fires were spreading. The air was filled with smoke. It was dark, and they could barely see. It seemed as if there was no way out. And then there came a voice, clear, calm, saying he had found the stairs. a young man in his 20s, strong, emerged from the smoke, and over his nose and his mouth, he wore a red handkerchief. He called for fire extinguishers to fight back the flames. He tended to the wounded. He led those survivors down the stairs to safety and carried a woman on his shoulders down 17 flights. And then he went back up all those flights, then back down again, bringing more wounded to safety, until that moment when the tower fell. They didn't know his name. They didn't know where he came from, but they knew their lives had been saved by the man in the red bandana. Again, Mayor Bloomberg, distinguished guests, Mayor de Blasio, Governors Christie and Cuomo, and the families and survivors of that day. To all those who responded with such courage, on behalf of Michelle and myself and the American people, it is an honor for us to join in your memories, to recall and to reflect, but above all to reaffirm the true spirit of 9/11. Love, compassion, sacrifice, and to enshrine it forever in the heart of our nation. Michelle and I just had the opportunity to join with others on a visit with some of the survivors and families, men and women who inspire us all, and we had a chance to visit some of the exhibits. And I think all who come here will find it to be a profound and moving experience. I want to express our deep gratitude to everybody who was involved in this great undertaking, for bringing us to this day, for giving us this sacred place of healing and of hope. Here at this memorial, this museum, we come together. We stand in the footprints of two mighty towers, graced by the rush of eternal waters. We look into the faces of nearly 3,000 innocent souls, men and women and children of every race, every creed, from every corner of the world. And we can touch their names and hear their voices, and glimpse the small items that speak to the beauty of their lives. A wedding ring, a dusty helmet, a shining badge. Here, we tell their story so that generations yet unborn will never forget. Of co-workers who led others to safety, of passengers who stormed the cockpit, our men and women in uniform who rushed into an inferno, our first responders who charged up those stairs, a generation of service members, our 9/11 generation, who have served with honor in more than a decade of war. A nation that stands tall and united and unafraid, because no act of terror can match the strength or the character of our country. Like the Great Wall and bedrock that embrace us today, nothing can ever break us. Nothing can change who we are as Americans. On that September morning, Allison Crowther lost her son, Wells. Months later, she was reading the newspaper, an article about those final minutes in the towers. Survivors recounted how a young man wearing a red handkerchief had led them to safety. And in that moment, Allison knew. Ever since he was a boy, her son had always carried a red handkerchief. Her son Wells was the man in the red bandana. Wells was just 24 years old, with a broad smile and a bright future. He worked in the South Tower on the 104th floor. He had a big laugh, a joy of life, and dreams of seeing the world. He worked in finance, but he had also been a volunteer firefighter. And after the planes hit, he put on that bandana and spent his final moments saving others. 3 years ago this month, after our SEALs made sure that justice was done, I came to Ground Zero, and among the families here that day was Allison Crowther. And she told me about Wells and his fearless spirit. And she showed me a handkerchief like the one he wore that morning. And today, as we saw on our tour, one of his red handkerchiefs is on display in this museum. And from this day forward, all those who come here will have a chance to know the sacrifice of a young man who, like so many, gave his life so others might live. Those we lost live on in us, in the families who love them still, in the friends who remember them always, and in a nation that will honor them now and forever. And today it is my honor to introduce two women forever bound by that day, united in their determination to keep alive the true spirit of 9/11. Wells Crowther's mother, Allison, and one of those he saved, Ling Young.
Secure. Okay. My name is Ling Young. I'm here today because of Wells, a man I did not get the chance to thank. It was very hard for me to come here today, but I wanted to do so I could say thank you to his parents and my new friend, Jeff and Allison.
Thank you. I am Wells Crowther's mother, Allison Crowther. My husband, Jefferson, and I could not be more proud of our son. For us, he lives on in the people he helped and in the memory of what he chose to do that Tuesday in September. Wells believed that we are all connected as one human family, that we are here to look out for and to care for one another. This is life's most precious meaning. It is our greatest hope that when people come here and see Wells's red bandana, they will remember how people helped each other that day. And we hope that they will be inspired to do the same in ways both big and small. This is the true legacy of September 11th.
We're sitting here in Studio 1A, Matt Lauer along with Savanna Guthrie and Tom Brokaw sitting with us here, just as you were with me on September 11th, 2001. If there was any doubt, Tom, that this museum and the events of today could connect us all back to those emotions that we were feeling on on that day and the days after, I think those doubts are gone.
We had no idea of the high drama that was going on in those towers. I remember you and I talking at one point, because I'd grown up around heavy construction. I said, those towers will have to be brought down. And moments later, they came down. We did not know how many people were still left in there, how high the death toll would be. And we certainly didn't know the stories of young Mr. Crowther and all the others who helped people get out and gave their own lives, and then those who were trapped with no opportunity to get out. And it still resonates, not just in New York, but across the country.
And the president, beginning his remarks, was clearly moved by what he had just seen with the First Lady on that tour.
There's a New York writer who said today, this museum will break your heart. And I think hearing these stories and recognizing that it's not just Wells Crowther, there are some 3,000 stories just as heart-wrenching that obviously had their lives changed forever on this day.
Well, what I liked about what Mrs. Crowther had to say at the end was, and I think it's a reminder for the country, her son gave his life helping others, and we all have to reach out to one another. We've kind of lost a lot of that since 9/11, about how we unify ourselves in the face of common enemies.
And not only ourselves, but ourselves and our place around the world.
That's right.
It seems to have changed.
Well, it's 13. Thank you, Tom. It's 13 years in the making, and obviously a monument to heroism, and also a reminder that none of us should forget what happened that day. We're going to have a lot more on MSNBC and NBCNews.com, and of course a full wrap-up tonight on NBC Nightly News.
Some of you return now to regularly scheduled programming. For the rest of you, there's more of today. This has been an NBC News Special Report.
Malibu's because of a problem with the power-assisted brakes. GM says